Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank everyone for coming out here to support this important event. My name is Cecibel Contreras, and I'm the founder of Incest Survivors United Voices of America, and I'm also a child sexual abuse survivor. I would like to share my story briefly. I was a very happy child with good and loving parents, but sadly a child's life can change in seconds. Unfortunately, many children around the world wake up to a real-life nightmare. My nightmare started in 1980, and I was 9 years old. I was raped, tortured, and threatened into silence for many years by my father. Many years of darkness, pain, and silent screams that were never heard. Many years of sexual slavery. Each time I was raped, I slowly died. Each day I would pray for God to take me away, because I waited for many years for someone to come and rescue me, and no one came. And they ignored the most obvious. I think 130 days absent from school would have been a good enough reason to suspect that something was wrong. My child sexual abuse was very evident. I was no longer the giggly and bubbly child. My soul was broken, and I no longer cared if I lived or died. It was 1985, and I was still living the horrors of child sexual abuse. That day, I was severely beaten and sodomized. I knew I had to rescue myself, and God confirmed this on the next day. As I was getting ready for school for the first time, my father allowed me to go to school by myself because he wasn't feeling well. I knew this was my chance to escape, or I would remain prisoner of this crime for years to come. As I was leaving to school, my father took the last time to threaten me. He said I had to be a good girl and not say anything or he would kill my mother. I looked at him and said, "Yes, Daddy, I promise I won't say anything." But deep inside, I knew I had to escape. As I walked out the door, my heart was pounding and my mind was full of fears. But I walked to the 40th precinct, stood in front of the building for a couple of seconds, wondering if they would believe me and how everyone was going to find out my shameful secret. But nothing could be worse than the horrors I endured. I went inside the building trembling, scared. I could almost hear my heartbeat. I saw a police officer in the front desk, and he asked, "How can I help you?" I replied with a shaky voice, "Help me. My father has been raping me for 5 years." My father was immediately arrested and sentenced 10 years. And from those 10 years, he completed 7, and the rest was on parole. My nightmare didn't end on that day. I was placed in 7 foster homes in a period of 1 year. There, I was sexually abused, physically and emotionally abused. I couldn't understand why this was happening to me, and I remained silent once again because the system already failed me. I was angry and I felt betrayed by my family, the system, and even God. A year went by in 7 foster homes, and I finally was awarded back to my mother. She had been cleared up from the crime. I was going home finally. But terrible damage had been done. I was broken, with no guidance and no direction, left in a world that was going to chew me up and spit me back out without mercy. My father's family abandoned me. My mother didn't believe. Our relationship was never the same. She never believed and supported me. My trauma was buried with all the family secrets. I was never allowed to speak about my sexual abuse, and when I did, my mother would say that I was crazy, I was making things up. Years later, I began my journey of self-destruction. Alcohol, drugs, promiscuity, and several suicide attempts. I had lost everything with this crime. It was a silent cry for help, but once again, no one reached out. I knew I had to make another decision in my life, immediately. I had to find help, or I was going to be killed by the thugs in the street that I had adopted as my family, or I was going to kill myself. I sought help began my healing, and I promised myself that one day I was going to share my story. I want everyone to know that child sexual abuse, incest, is a crime of betrayal, a crime that takes our life and dreams away, a crime that has several repercussions, and if not addressed correctly, it can become a major obstacle in a survivor's life. But I also want every survivor to know that there's healing. I don't know if complete healing, but something similar or very close to healing. However, we have to be willing to accept and work diligently in each and every day to find balance. After all the years I lost frozen in that victim stage, finally I found freedom. I learned that it wasn't my fault and that I deserved to be happy. I learned that I'm not my past, but what I am today, this woman you see here before you, is because of my past. I hope that makes sense. It does. My struggles and my wounds have placed me here today, and for that I'm very grateful. I'm stronger than ever. Even if I don't see it, I'm stronger than ever. The very thing that sought to destroy me motivates me each day to fight for our children. I'm very lucky to be alive. Most children don't survive because they lose their lives during the crime, or years later they take their own lives. If there's a child I can rescue, then my pain and all suffering will not be in vain. Do you know that every 6 minutes a child is abused and neglected? 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 6 boys will experience some forms of sexual abuse before the age of 18. That's what the national statistics say. However, I believe the amount of unreported crimes exceed those numbers by greater proportions. An average of 5.5 children per 10,000 enrolled in daycare are sexually abused. An average of 8.9 children out of every 10,000 are abused in their home. 90% of victims know their abuser in some way. 68 or more are sexually abused by a family member. 80% of survivors develop a mental disorder and never fully recover. Child sexual abuse survivors are at high risk of suicide and accidental fatal drug overdose. Children who experience neglect, abuse, and child sexual abuse are 59% more likely to be arrested as a juvenile, 28% more likely to be arrested as an adult, and 30% more likely to commit a violent crime. 80% of prostitutes reported history of sexual abuse during their childhood. 70% reported incest. As you can see, this crime affects our nation. It is an attack not only to our children, but to our future. This is the reason that events like these are so important. The cause of child sexual abuse affects everyone. The community has to be informed about these silent crimes in order to prevent and protect children from sexual predators. We need to arm our children by speaking to them about the right touch and the bad touch. Let us not focus only on stranger danger. Let's show them how to protect themselves and be alert with everyone, even family members. We need Jessica's law to pass in every state. We can't allow pedophiles to have a second chance. There's no cure for pedophilia, so the focus is protecting children. Child sex offenders need a minimum sentence of 25 years and a maximum of life prison for first-time child sex offenders. We need Erin's law, a sexual abuse prevention curriculum in all schools. It's important for children to be educated on this prevalent crime. Demand for stricter laws. Make calls for your local politicians. Demand for the statute of limitations to be lifted. Our pain has no end, so why should an offender be protected? My story is the story of millions of survivors around the world. I was left alive for a purpose, and that purpose is to be the voice for the voiceless. Incest is no longer a taboo. It's very real, and it happens more frequently than what you think. I believe child sexual abuse is equal to death, and the criminal should be tried with the same severity. I want to ask everyone in here to stand up for children's rights. We can all change this world, but only if we stand together as one. Incest Survivors United Voices of America seeks unity and partnership with other organizations like Family and Friends fighting against child sexual abuse and other advocates. We want justice, healing for all survivors, safety and protection for our children. I want to thank Pani for giving me this opportunity to speak today. Thank you for believing in my work. I want to thank all my colleagues. I admire and respect each one and everyone who's fighting this worthy battle. Together we can make a difference. I want to thank my children, the second victims who have been affected tremendously and suffered due to my child sexual abuse. I love you all. And last but not least, I want to thank God for giving me the chance to be the woman I was meant to be, and for giving me the courage to speak out. I want to thank everyone who patiently listened to my story, the story of many children who died during the crime, and the story of many children who are still trapped in the claws of child sexual abuse. Let's fight for them. Thank you.